Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in Rudolf Otto in Naturalism and Religion, published in 1907. We're going to take a look at our penultimate lesson. This is Chapter 10, pages 278 to 317, and only because we know of the idea of the holy, only because we have already studied the idea of the holy, you could call this lesson Numinous Consciousness. It is a discussion of what later he will define as Numinous Consciousness. We will address the autonomy of spirit and the fundamental answer to naturalism as the activity of consciousness, which we know for Otto is numinous consciousness. Let's begin with block 1. Take a look at the autonomy of spirit. Otto tells us that naturalism attempts to reduce spirit to terms of nature, to rob it of its essential character of being above nature, and thereby neglecting sensation, perception, thought, and will, saying that mind simply accompanies nature, and that mind must yield preeminence to nature. That is the great fallacy of naturalism. But he says, with our religious conception, we basically begin with a belief in spirit, with the conviction that spirit is the real, and we seek to find the noble and the divine in the course of the world. And furthermore, we posit that the world of feeling happens to be the most real. It is the true reality. We posit the significance of existence. We see spiritual signs within existence. And significance really is the key issue here, the fact that we do see signs in existence. For those with Christian conviction, we see Samian signs of the spiritual within existence. Take a look at note 3. Upon spirit, the following are abbreviated: freedom, responsibility, duty, moral control, self-development, and ideal aim or eschatology. All of that is abbreviated under the concept of spirit. Coupled with the categories, says Otto, of the good, the true, and the beautiful. And religious thinking will think in the very highest analogies. Religion maintains its validity because of the positing the independence of spirit. That is an axiom that is posited by the religious mind and religious conviction, the independence of spirit. It is superior to nature. It is not subservient to nature. It is superior to nature. So this is a key concept, this block 1, note 4, the independence of spirit. That's a key concept for Otto. Spirit cannot be derived from anything else. Knowledge and known realities corroborate religion. Faith goes against the appearances because we seek the truth in the depth of appearance. We posit the notion of the will to believe as a desire for the spiritually ideal. We proclaim that to be self-evident truth, axiomatic truth. And so this desire for the ideal is taken up in note 5. With the body of living things there arises what we call the concept of soul. And it gains content and it does mature in its reality. Naturalism says the mind is bound up with a material basis, meaning the brain and the chains of neurons. Naturalism attempts to show the error of the independence of the spiritual by saying that mind can be reduced to neurology in the brain. Naturalism seeks to explain vital phenomena in terms of mechanism. So the key issue, the key debate that needs answering is the debate between Note 6, vitality or mechanistic reflex. How do we define the mental activity of the self? Is it an activity of vitality or is it a mechanistic reflex? If we posit that human volition has influence upon the corporeal, this violates the constancy of energy theory by rationalism. Naturalism says what the senses convey builds our mental content. The soul merely unites perceptions as a passive function of uniting perceptions. But Otto says for us the spirit implies spontaneity. Spirit implies spontaneous mental activity, not passive unifying a perception, but spontaneity. Therefore, the key issue is an issue that evolves in the realm of epistemology. It's about answering the question, how do we know? Is that a materialistic concept, or is epistemology a psychical and a spiritual reality? Or is it a material reality? Obviously, the answer that Otto wants to give is that it is a spiritual reality. Psychical and spiritual. Let's go to block 2 and take a look at which we should expect. We're now going to get the answer. Here's the answer to the entire manuscript. The entire manuscript has been outlining the phenomenology that underlies Otto's position. We covered his basic fundamental phenomenology. Then we went through the stages of negation of the theory of descent. We've looked at the affirmation of the movement from dunamis to energia. Now, in our penultimate lesson, here it is. Block 2, the fundamental answer. Here is Professor Otto's answer. Guiding principles are only possible if mind and thought are free and active. In direct experience, we possess the guarantee of spiritual truth within empirical direct experience as the content of mind, true mind, and its capacities through self-development and self-deepening. And that leads to practical experience of the spiritual in the very practical realm of actuality. And experience becomes a corroboration of this position. Corroboration takes place through critical insight into nature, recognizing the limitation of the scientific view. The depth of appearances is revealed to the hidden nature of the mind. The hidden nature of the mind. In other words, what later, in 1923, he's going to call the numinous mind. The hidden nature of the mind, which in 1923 he will label the numinous mind, as an unfolding of the true nature of things, as an undertaking of the holistic view of the, what we would term as believers, kingdom of God. So block 2, note 3, undertaking of the whole. Human nature and human spirit pertain to the religious outlook within the realm of ethics and morality, by initially positing the underivability of the spiritual. The spiritual is not derived out of the natural. What spiritually lives within the self becomes actual very gradually through growth and maturity, conditioned by stimuli from without. And remember, in a previous lesson, we discussed the stimuli from without. So just take a look at note 4. The spiritual advances along with the body. The psychical self struggles to gain control over itself. It struggles to gain control over the body. It struggles to attain united self-concentration. Through the experiences of inward centralization, we slowly and maturely form the centered self. The centered self, and that means centered on the person of Jesus Christ. The centered self. And he says we can express this as the moment and movement of regeneration. So he says in note 5, regeneration as inward centralization. It's a movement from dunamis, potentiality, to energia, actuality. However, the whence of regeneration, as where does it come from, or in other words, being born from above, is wholly hidden from us. It is a transcendent moment. We are drawn by the Father to hear the call of Christ, and that is that moment of having the heart transformed from a heart of stone to a heart of flesh. It's being born from above, if you look at the Gospel of John. Specifically in John chapter 3. He says that it is an insoluble riddle. It's never a function of correspondence, never a function of dependence. It is the autonomy of psychical process, and that is a notion that increasingly becomes dominant for those who hold the religious perspective, those who have the spiritual perception, the Christian point of view. We recognize that autonomy of the psychical process, this process of being born from above. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at Block 2, Note 6, the autonomy of psychical process. Consciousness cannot be compared with matter and energy. It is something wholly different. It's only known through inner experience. We posit the notion of a world governed by law and a consciousness awakened through the mystery of its conditioning. He always posits that notion of mysterion in the New Testament. Mystery. The mystery of being born from above. So under the mystery of consciousness awakening, consciousness is always the introduction of the qualitatively new. External bodies, external forces are discerned by consciousness. An objective thing reveals itself as it affects the self, revealing its character as a peculiar state of consciousness. And this is the movement of awareness through the state of stimulus and awareness. Stimulus and awareness. That's going to be his answer. The answer is consciousness as that state of stimulus and awareness. In Note 8. A perception is a feeling. It's a change in psychical state. And perception seeks the certainty of the real, of the spiritually real, by giving preeminence to consciousness, which possesses a peculiar creative character in itself. Consciousness in itself creates the world. We are involved in a creative process of participating in the kingdom of God, a creative process of participating in the movement of spirit from dunamis to energia. We've been invited into the creative movement of spiritual kingdom from dunamis to energia. And so the ultimate answer to the problem outlined in the book is Block 2, Note 9. Here's your ultimate answer. Consciousness as creating world, or better, consciousness as creating kingdom of God, through actual experience, actual possession, and actual enjoyment, which consciousness makes of the stimuli that it receives. The eternal movement of substance is transformed through consciousness into sound and into light. In other words, perception, thereby creating quality, charm, and value. And in that way, real world evolves out of itself. And I like the way that he terms that. The real evolves out of itself. It is self-actualizing. We are invited to participate in the movement of spirit, but the spirit self-actualizes itself. We participate by grace. We're invited to participate in the movement of spirit from dunamis to energia. That is the New Testament concept, the movement from dunamis to energia. And you can get that simply by studying every single one of Paul's letters. Spirit is the movement from energia, from dunamis, potentiality, to energia, actuality. It is self-actualizing. We participate in the movement of that kingdom, but it is evolving out of itself. And so we have the answer. We have the theoretical answer from Otto. And now that we have the theoretical answer, he's going to give us the practical aspects of this theoretical answer in Block 3. What is the articulated activity of numinous consciousness? And I'm going to call it numinous consciousness because we know that's the term he will give it in 1923 in the idea of the holy. It is spiritual consciousness or numinous consciousness. We begin with spontaneous synthesis in 3 Note 1. The law of the association of ideas is the law of mental behavior. Grouping through synthesis, performed by the thinking and performed by the feeling intellect. Remember, he calls the intellect the feeling intellect. Through the action of spontaneous synthesis. The soul is a unity without parts that sends signals to the intellect, especially the signal of purpose. The soul, here's the key point, the soul is exemplified as self-consciousness of the intellect, unity of consciousness as the moment of infusion, consciousness of ego as the moment of positing. There's your practical, articulated 3 moments of the intellect. You've got intellect, infusion, positing. Now we'll take a look at the signal of purpose from the self-conscious soul. The seat of our reflection in thought is the soul. It then expresses itself through signals out of its unified state, which become the foundation of the self's moral freedom. And this unified state of consciousness becomes the fundamental condition of all inner life. So, the key point, Block 3, Note 3, unity of consciousness is numinous consciousness, spiritual consciousness. This unity is essential for forming comparisons and abstractions of ideas within the intellect. Furthermore, it sends the signal of dependence to the moment of infusion to infuse the schema of the intellect emotively, giving it emotive empowerment, which then leads to the ego's positing of the figurative idea model. Consciousness of the ego and the obligatory need to take up positing leads to the consideration of personal relationship in actuality. The figurative idea model becomes my idea, my participation, which seeks confirmation in external reality through the community. Absolutely powerful penultimate lesson. This could be the final lesson, but it's not. We've got one more chapter. But this is the answer chapter. This is the penultimate lesson. Chapter 10 gives us, Block 2, the fundamental answer to the entire project of the book. It's going to wrap up Chapter 10. It's going to wrap up pages 278 to 317. We have one more lesson, Chapter 11, to finish the manuscript.